It was just after 8 on a rainy Monday morning in downtown Seattle. Employees hurried through the shining glass entrance of the 40-story headquarters of Harper Global Technologies, one of America's fastest-growing software companies. Luxury cars lined the curb while executives walked confidently toward the elevators, carrying expensive briefcases and talking about million-dollar contracts. A man wearing faded blue jeans, worn work boots, and a simple gray jacket quietly approached the front entrance. Beside him walked his 8-year-old son, Ethan, carrying a small backpack and holding his father's hand. Most people barely noticed them. The security guard stepped in front of the entrance. "Sir, employees only." The man smiled politely. "I work here." The guard looked him up and down before laughing. "I've worked this building for 6 years. I've never seen you before." "I understand," the man replied calmly. "My name is Daniel Brooks." The guard checked the employee list on his tablet. "There are hundreds of Daniels. Which department?" "The executive floor." Several employees nearby overheard the conversation and began whispering. "The executive floor," one woman laughed. "Looking like that?" Another man shook his head. "Probably another job applicant." Daniel didn't argue. Instead, he simply waited while Ethan looked up at him. "Dad, are we late?" "A little," Daniel answered with a warm smile. "But sometimes waiting teaches people more than arriving on time." Minutes later, a sharply dressed building manager named Richard Collins arrived. He immediately frowned. "What's going on here?" The guard pointed toward Daniel. "This man claims he works on the executive floor." Richard looked Daniel over with obvious disgust. "Sir, this building serves billion-dollar clients. We have standards." Daniel remained calm. "I appreciate that. I simply need to reach my office." Richard folded his arms. "Your office? Let me guess. The janitor's closet?" Several employees burst into laughter. Ethan lowered his head, embarrassed by the comments. Daniel gently placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Never answer disrespect with anger," he whispered. "Character always reveals itself." Richard grew impatient. "If you don't leave in 30 seconds, I'm calling the police." Daniel slowly removed his phone and checked the time. "No need." Richard smirked. "So you finally decided to leave?" "No," Daniel replied. "The board meeting starts in 3 minutes." The lobby erupted with laughter again. One executive jokingly said, "Maybe he's here to buy the company." Daniel simply smiled. Across the street, 3 black SUVs quietly stopped at the curb. Nobody paid attention. The doors opened. Several members of the company's board of directors stepped out, followed by the chief legal officer and 2 senior assistants. The laughter inside the lobby slowly faded. The oldest board member walked directly toward Daniel. "Mr. Brooks," he said respectfully, extending both hands. "We're so sorry, traffic delayed us." The entire lobby became silent. Richard's confident smile disappeared. The board member continued. "The directors are already waiting for today's ownership announcement." The security guard looked confused. "Ownership?" Another director turned toward everyone watching. "I'd like to introduce the founder and majority owner of Harper Global Technologies, Mr. Daniel Brooks." The room froze. Several employees nearly dropped their coffee cups. Richard's face turned completely pale. The security guard stepped backward in disbelief. Daniel was the billionaire founder. Years earlier, Daniel had built the company from a tiny rented garage before stepping away from public attention after his wife passed away. Since then, he had worked mostly from private offices and video meetings while raising Ethan alone. Many newer employees had never seen him in person. Richard's voice trembled. "Sir, I didn't know." Daniel looked at him calmly. "I know." The directors escorted Daniel and Ethan toward the private executive elevator. Just before entering, Daniel turned around. "Please invite Mr. Collins, the security supervisor, human resources, and every executive vice president to the boardroom." Richard forced a nervous smile. "Of course, sir." Inside the elevator, Ethan looked up. "Dad, are they all in trouble?" Daniel smiled gently. "That depends on whether they failed because they made a mistake or because they forgot how to treat people." When the elevator doors opened on the top floor, dozens of senior executives immediately stood from the conference table. "Good morning, Mr. Brooks." Daniel greeted each person before helping Ethan sit near the window with breakfast that had already been prepared. 5 minutes later, Richard entered the boardroom sweating heavily. The security supervisor followed. Then came the vice presidents and department heads. Nobody dared speak. Daniel quietly stood. "This morning," he began, I learned something valuable about my own company. Every eye remained fixed on him. I discovered that appearance has become more important than integrity. The room stayed silent. Daniel placed a security camera photograph on the large screen. It showed him and Ethan waiting outside while employees laughed. Then another image appeared, Richard mocking him. Then another, executives watching without saying a single word. I spent 20 minutes outside the headquarters of a company I built, Daniel continued. Not one senior leader asked a simple question. He paused. They judged clothing instead of character. Richard lowered his head, already knowing what was coming next. Richard slowly stepped forward, his hands trembling. Mr. Brooks, I sincerely apologize. I made a terrible mistake. Daniel looked at him without anger. You didn't make one mistake, Richard. You made dozens of choices. Every sentence you spoke was a choice. Every opportunity to show respect was a choice. The room remained completely silent. Daniel pressed a button on the remote, and another video appeared on the large screen. It showed several employees laughing while Ethan stood quietly beside his father, trying not to cry. Daniel turned toward the executives. Which part of our company values says respect is only for people wearing expensive suits? No one answered. Our mission statement hangs in every hallway, Daniel continued. It says every person deserves dignity. Yet this morning those words meant nothing. The head of human resources lowered her eyes in shame. Daniel walked toward Ethan. My son witnessed everything. Today he learned an important lesson, not about business, but about people. Ethan looked at the executives. I wasn't sad because you laughed at my dad, he said softly. I was sad because nobody tried to help him. His innocent words hit harder than any speech. Several executives looked away, unable to meet the boy's eyes. Daniel nodded proudly. That's exactly the difference between leadership and management. He turned back to the board. I've spent the last 3 months visiting our offices across America without announcing who I was. In Chicago, Dallas, Denver, Boston, and Miami, I met receptionists, janitors, interns, and security guards. Most treated strangers with kindness. He paused. But today at our headquarters, I saw arrogance replace leadership. Richard knew there was nothing left to say. Daniel picked up a folder. Richard Collins, effective immediately. Your employment is terminated. Richard closed his eyes. I understand, Daniel continued. The security supervisor is also relieved of his duties, not because he stopped an unknown visitor, but because he encouraged humiliation instead of professionalism. The supervisor quietly removed his company badge. Daniel wasn't finished. He looked around the conference room. 3 vice presidents watched everything happen and did absolutely nothing. One by one, he read their names. Effective today, you are removed from your executive positions. The room filled with stunned silence. Some executives looked shocked, while others understood exactly why. Daniel then smiled at a young receptionist named Maria, who had been invited into the meeting. Everyone looked confused. Daniel displayed another security recording. While everyone else laughed, Maria had quietly walked over to Ethan, offered him a bottle of water, and asked if he was okay. She never knew who Daniel was. She simply saw a child who looked uncomfortable. Maria, Daniel said warmly, what made you do that? She nervously replied, because kindness shouldn't depend on someone's job title. Daniel smiled. Exactly. He looked at the board. Starting today, Maria will become our new director of employee experience. She understands our company values better than people earning 10 times her salary. The room erupted in applause. Maria covered her mouth in disbelief as tears filled her eyes. I don't know what to say. Daniel answered, just keep being the person you already are. He then announced a new company policy. From this day forward, every executive, including myself, will spend 1 day each month working alongside receptionists, cleaners, cafeteria staff, and security teams. Leadership begins with service. Even the board members applauded. News of the morning spread throughout the building within minutes. Employees realized that the billionaire owner had arrived dressed like an ordinary father, and the people who judged him had lost their careers. By afternoon, the story had spread across social media and national news. People praised Daniel Brooks not for firing executives, but for reminding corporate America that respect cannot be purchased with money or titles. As Daniel prepared to leave the office that evening, Ethan held his father's hand. Dad? Yes? Were you angry today? Daniel smiled as they walked toward the elevator. For a few moments. What changed? I remembered that great leaders don't punish people because they're powerful. They make difficult decisions because they're responsible. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, reflecting from the glass towers surrounding the city. Ethan looked up at his father. "When I grow up, I want people to feel welcome whenever they meet me." Daniel gently placed his arm around his son. "If you remember that, you'll already be richer than any billionaire." The two walked away together, not as the owner of a billion-dollar company and his son, but simply as a father teaching his child that the greatest measure of success is not wealth, power, or position. It is how kindly you treat someone who has nothing to offer you in return. And from that day forward, no employee at Harper Global Technologies ever forgot the lesson that changed the company forever. The person standing quietly at the door may one day be the one holding the key to everyone else's future.